Hi guys, welcome. I'm Elaine, and today we're going to be sketching this. So you might think we've got an easy task ahead, but nothing is ever easy and, and straightforward, is it? So I wanted to talk a little bit about this photograph, and the reason I liked it so much when my friend sent it to me is because if we just look at the perimeter, we have very few clues as to what we're looking at. We've got the whiskers, but basically that's it. So I love this photograph because we're working on our shading and our variation between light and dark and appropriate shading and whatnot to do curvature and depth in our sketches. And when we have a photograph like this with very few changes in the perimeter, it is only the shading that we do, the variations between light and dark that we add to our sketch that will actually tell us what we're looking at. Okay? So we don't have the ears sticking up and a cute little tail telling us that it's a bunny rabbit. We don't have the beak and the head and the body all separate and the tail and legs to tell us that we're looking at a bird. We don't have any of those clues as to the perimeter. So this photograph is going to be an excellent exercise in us adding the shading appropriately in the right places to our oval so that we actually end up with a cute little bunny rabbit. So, and he really is a very cute little bunny rabbit. I should have written down the name of the breed. I don't remember, but they're the tiny little ones that fit in your hand and would barely make a sandwich. You know what I mean? Don't tell my friend that I said that. So what I'd like you to have today is, because we're really going to be focusing on our shading, I'd like you to have a pen as usual where you can sort of control a little bit the degree of ink that you drop depending on the amount of pressure that you apply. And what I did grab is a crappy pen that drops a lot of ink just so that to save time for some of the darker areas. So if you've got your scrap piece of paper and a couple of pens, I've got my coffee because this is definitely going to be like a coffee's kind of sketch. Let's give it a shot and just see what happens. So I do want to start with the head. I think when we examine and understand what we're looking at and the key features, there is a very tiny little notch here between the nose and the upper lip. This is very, very small. The bone on the front of the face curving outward. This is the bone that protects the eye socket. And then we've got the top of the head. Underneath, we've got the tissue for the lips, the front of the face, a very slight curvature going into the chest. A few bumps here. These are actually his front paws. My friend said that he was shedding. I don't know. He's always kind of looked like this to me. but along the base here, there is some variation and some curvature, and this is due primarily to the fur coming off his foot. At the back here, this is the back part of his haunch, if that's the proper term. So you can see the lighter fur here. This darker patch is the curve of his haunch. So this is like some depth here and some depth here. And in this crappy photograph that I've printed off, there's it is darker back here, which is actually the back part of his body, and this is the back part of his leg. So, you know, we'll just do the best we can, but I think if we can manage to get proportionately a shape down and then add enough shading around the face, the eye socket, the ears, the curvature of the back, a little bit. This here is a definition because he's got his head tucked in. So we've got the side of the cheek tucked in against the upper chest here. So, you know, we'll just, we'll see how it goes. But hopefully, if we add these basic areas of shading, it will be enough to show that it's not a volleyball that's being squished. It's actually like a little bunny rabbit. So you've got your pen, I've got mine. Let's just do a very tiny little notch for his nose. And when we're working on shading and proportion, you see that this tiny little notch is quite a bit below the bottom of the eye. So when you start, you want to make sure this is small, because if you do, unless you want to draw a monster rabbit and you've got a great big piece of paper, which would be great too, but we want a tiny little notch and we want it lower down because it's sort of like most of the face is above the nose. And then for his, you know, for such a tiny little little bunny rabbit, he is kind of like spread out quite a bit. I don't know. Let's just do a very, very tiny little notch, and his nose kind of goes, curves up. We're doing the skull on the front of the face. And you can always make his nose smaller or whatever. This angle, I've got to change my angle already. And let's go up. We've got the bone over the eye socket to protect the eye at the top of the head. And we go around. It's a little bit flat here. We've got some fur sticking up here. And we've got curvature for his ear. See, look at this. I'm already running out of space. I don't know what to do. I think I better grab another piece of paper because I don't really like... I gotta start smaller, you guys. I always do this. You should see some of the birds that I start drawing. I think they're gonna be tiny, and it's like monster bird. Okay, what was I saying? Doing a tiny little notch. I'm gonna start over here. And I'm not gonna worry so much about you guys seeing what I'm doing because it's probably gonna be crap compared to what you're doing. All right, now let's go again, and we've got the front of the face is actually quite upright. I'm gonna make it smaller. The bone around the eye socket. Top of the head. It's first sticking up here. And you know, sometimes when you have a reference photo that doesn't really have like a lot of This is the curvature that I'm doing here. Features on the perimeter, you can use an arrow to mark where you actually are in your sketch. Okay, and this is the curvature of the back. And we'll leave it like that. Okay, so I'm not going to do any more because I don't want to get screwed up making this too short. I've got space to bump it out if I need to. I want to go back and do his little lip at the front, and it curves kind of like in and down around the face and then into the chest. Not too much, and we've got some little toes that we can see here, and the bottom part of the front foot here, and then we've got his bottom, and this is actually, this right here is curvature for his back foot. Now we don't have very many markings, but this curvature here, if we go straight up, kind of goes through the ears. If we go straight up, I'm not off too much there. Actually, that's not too bad, so I'm going to leave that like that, but just curve his foot there. There's that inside, and then down, and then this little bit of fur that's sticking out at the back of his foot, and then up and into the bum. Okay, so right now I can tell I don't have the depth that I want, so I'm probably going to change a lot of this up here at the top of his head. I just want to, because I think the positioning is okay, but I just want to make maybe his, because the angle is like sort of facing down onto him, so I just want to have this like more like that. So what if we just actually go ahead and pull his bum down to the base, and then the haunch, and like that. Now I still think that I don't have the correct amount of curvature to his back, so I want to bring this up. If it's easier for me going in the other direction like that, and then we've got this ear here, and bringing that forward to his head for I don't know. See, I've got 3 different lines here. Now, let's just, with very light pressure, start adding some of the shading on the face. And I'll just see if I can salvage this sketch. I don't want to go too dark, but having some of these initial markings help keep us oriented. This change, this little bit of shading along the front of the face is showing the dip in the skull. Okay, so if we do this one here and then leave a space, and then we've got some depth going into the eye socket. And actually, I think I need to back this up more, because there's more distance here between the eye and the front of the head. I just want to move this back a little bit. And then leave some white patches on the eyeball itself to show where the light is reflecting off the curve. Got shading up, and then at the back of the eye, you know, we can just work away on this and see what happens. So I think I feel like I've drawn the eye too big. And turn your page too, right? Turn your paper so that it's easier for you. Let's just do the shading behind the eye. It goes up. There's this shading here. Just go down to the base of the ear. And just trying to move from one section to the next. And any sort of small variations in the fur help us to sort of stay oriented in the reference photo. Let's pull this section, this shading from, this is kind of like level with the eye. Let's just start here and take this little bit of shadow under the ear, bring this down and sort of like define his face a little bit where he's got his head all tucked in, and see how this is when we kind of joined it up. Like that. Now we've got different shading here, and this kind of goes up, and we've got all the kind of like messy fur here, and then a bit of shading on the ear. How do I want to do this? Not really too sure, but just have the fur ruffled a little bit on the top of his head, above the eye, and there. And what we can do is let's put in the shadow where the light is not catching between the ears there, and then along his back. Bring this shadow out and down. fur that kind of goes this way. And then this dark here. And just variation in the shading where that fur goes. And then up here, I just want to can curve his back a little bit more, but here on the top of his ear, there's a little bit of shading where the contour of the ear is. We've got a little bit of this little shading here for the contour of this ear. Hope you're not working on the face while I'm covering it all up. And then the shadow on his back. Let's give ourselves a break from all that detail around his face and just put in a first layer of fur around his back. We'll darken his haunch. Not his haunch, his bum. His bum there, and then we've got the lighter contours. The haunch, and then some darker. I'll pull this down. Okay. Oh my god, he looks so crappy. Okay, but have faith. I think this is good enough to work with. My gosh, I can start again. All right, now what do we want to do? Oh god, there's so much, you guys. I still think this ear should be a little bit higher up. But I'm willing to work this if you're willing to keep me company. Is he rounded enough? I'd say that's a no. See, whenever there's too much difficult stuff to do, I need to do something super easy, like color his bum, or something that is totally less demanding. Give myself a break from all the hard stuff that I should be doing. So let's just get down some fur. What the heck? I can't imagine what you're thinking. I won't tell you what I'm thinking. I'm gonna need to take a break and have another sip of my coffee. Let's just get this in. He's furry all over, so let's just give ourselves a break and do something like this. Okay. All right. No more dicking around. Let's get to serious work here. Okay. So I would like to just kind of start again and work the face. We've got the dip between, this is the bump in the bone protecting this eye and the bump in the bone protecting that eye. So, and there's a dip between. So that is something that we can add. Make sure that you've got some shading down, in the face to represent or to sort of show where that curvature is in the skull. Now, we've got fur kind of going in different directions around the face and the eye socket. With the way the light is catching him, it's true that there are areas where he's like very pale, but I'd rather not leave white patches on our sketch, okay? Let's try to, blend them in all over, and we'll just see if we can have a base layer of shading and then bump up the contrast. Do this. Okay, so there's this shading that is like right by the eye, and then there's this other shading that is kind of like in front of the eye and goes out to the nose and then down the side of the face around the muzzle. And this shading by the eye is telling us about the depth, the eye socket being a little bit back and protected. Maybe the size of the eye that I did isn't too bad after all. And we'll just continue to get the fur down on his face a little bit. And then on the head, this is all kind of like not really going in the proper, it doesn't all go in one direction. It is all a little bit disjointed here. And then we'll just shade this in. And it's smooth on the tops of his ears. Now what we need to do is really define this spacing. And we do have our other pen that will drop a lot of ink when we need to, so we can, when the time comes to put in like some pretty heavy shading, because we really want to emphasize the contrast, we can use our darker pen. But I think right now it's important just to sort of get down those patches. I don't know if his head needs to be higher, you guys. It seems to me it has to be like a little bit more curvature right there. And we'll get the shading on his back here that shows where his ear is casting a shadow. See how this is like flat? His ears kind of has a flattish tip, just with the, happens to be just with the angle of the picture. But we do have fairly good definition in shadow where this ear is elevated, not lying flat against his back. I want to pull this shading in, because when we do that, it's gonna really help define the edge of the ear. And the last thing that I want us to do is draw this darn line, okay? So I'm trying to avoid that. So what we'll do is just work it with our shading instead. I sure hope I didn't start the video by saying that this was going to be easy. I can't imagine me saying that. I'm not going to be saying that for years. Years and years and years and years. I can't ever imagine me saying, oh, just have an easy sketch for us today. Doing easy crap doesn't interest me anyway. If something is easy, that's not challenging our skill levels. Okay, now what do I want to do? Are the ears back far enough? Do a check, you guys. See, if we draw a line straight down for the tip of the ear, we come halfway through the foot. Oh, would you look at that? What? How did that happen? Okay. But I do feel that I haven't made his ear fat enough. I have a little bit more definition around his, you know, this, I have to say, all this tissue and cartilage around the ear is always so darn confusing. You know, it's, yeah. This, on my sketch, it should be lower. Oh, well, no, look. See? That's kind of like at the bottom of the eye. Maybe it's not so bad after all. Let's bring this forward a little bit. Other variations in the fur. So this shadow here is caused by two different surfaces. Okay, we've got the fur from his cheek bumping up against the fur on his chest. That's what's causing this shadow here. This drops down a little bit more. So we want to make sure that we get that definition there. And then I should have a light patch, which I've sort of not, I've been over enthusiastic in sketching, and this should be a little bit darker because this darker patch here is actually the, like his, the curvature around his front leg and his front foot. So we've got body curvature happening here. That's what all this is. Can't you tell by the way I'm coloring it in? Oh man. Okay, and then this, and I think I've put this too low on mine, so I just need to like alter this and put his haunch a little bit higher. What have I done? I'm missing this little shading around where his feet. Let's see, and see, this is the fur from his body, and these are his little toes sticking out. Okay, so let's just don't shade his haunch too much because this is the bone of like his hip or something, okay? So it's kind of like flat and it's catching the light. So we don't want to have that super dark. And then what's behind it is the curvature of his bum. Okay, so let's just keep, I want to like pull this shadow out a little bit more. I think I've totally reached the point where there's not much gained by looking at the reference photo. I just have to kind of work and fix what I've done. See, the trick is to never show anybody the reference photo, because then they'll see what a crappy job you've done compared to what you were working from. You can just say, oh, look at this little bunny rabbit I sketched. And they'll say, wow, that's amazing. And if it looks really different from the reference photo, be sure to label it. Tell them exactly what it is, so that your feelings don't get hurt when you show off your work. A little bit more contour in his face. Okay, well, I'm exhausted. Let's go back. Let's look at our perimeter. Do we just have... Oh, see? That's not so bad. Cover up your picture, you guys. You want to have a little notch for the nose. Not too much going on. A little bumps for the toes and the feet. And then we've kind of, you know, done... you know, we've got that part right. And then we've added shading to our little football, our deflated volleyball, to turn it into a little bunny rabbit. I want to keep going, because honestly, this is like way better than I thought it was going to be. I'm so glad I can't hear you and all your laughter. Oh, I know what's going to help. All his whiskers. That's kind of like adding the bill, the beak to a bird sketch. It's like a massive clue to what it actually is. How can we make him cuter? All this nonsense here. So there's so much going on. My gosh, there's like curvature of the ear. There's fur that's sticking up. There's the cartilage at the base of the ear that is blending into the head. What the heck? But we have to make sure that we don't, you know, try not to get carried away with your areas that you're darkening, because then we're gonna end up losing some of the curvature and stuff, and we don't want that to happen. And this ear, I think like the angle's not too bad, but to me it looks, the angle is wrong. See how in the reference photo it's kind of up more against his back? Mine's a little bit flat. So I'm just going to see if I can change the shading right here along the edge to sort of lift the way that the ear is laying on the back. And this is really confusing right here. So this is what not to do. So you're going to have to make sure your shading between the two ears is nicely defined, so that we've actually got more of an impression of how they split there and lie side by side. So I'm just gonna try to fix my shading a little bit. And here, even though there's not shadow cast by this top ear on his back, if we just darken this a little bit at the end of the ear, it might show a bit more of this. Okay, so don't panic about all this darkness here. We can go over the fur on his bum and his back to sort of like tone down the difference between this shadow and what we've done with the rest of his body. And then with the ear itself, we do have to make sure that we've got some shading on it. Just to really illustrate how it curves. Okay, see here, I've made, okay, I got too carried away, so the top of his ear I shaded too much, and now I'm in trouble for sort of showing the definition at the end of the ear. So you know what they say, those who can't do teach. Oh, it's totally time to give us okay, let's put in some whiskers, honestly. Okay, so these right here, we've got whiskers that are part of the, like at the front of the eye. And for some reason, just with the way the lighting is in the photograph, we're not able to see all the whiskers that are kind of like, that we know are there on the other side of his face. Gosh, he looks like a little putty tat with all these. I don't have to add all of them, but, you know, does kind of give us a break and something, you know, specific to do. We could actually add in a couple little dots on his muzzle where the whiskers attach through the fur. I wouldn't mind trying to just clean up his face a little bit more. Or clean it up, or just like have more definition and whatnot. And then around the eye, so we've got a couple of things going on. We've got curvature in the eye socket, as well as color variation. And give yourself a break by, you know, making his eyeball nice and dark. Just remember to leave those two areas white where the light is reflecting off the curve of the eyeball. This patch is a bit too big. I'm just going to tone that down a little bit. And leave a border around the eyeball, because this is tissue right here that we can see. So we can just have that visible as well. And then his little eyebrow a little bit, and then this kind of messy short fur on top of his head. Okay, so I've screwed this, among other things. What have I done here? This needs to be blended out a little bit more. And in places where I've gone too dark, I just need to sort of like fix it and kind of blend it in a little bit. Man, oh man. I knew this was going to be tricky, but jeepers creepers, this has been a good... He's given us a good run for our money. And we want to have a nice defined set of shadow here on his cheek, curving into his body. Okay, so now I'm just kind of like messing around. Well, jeepers, that's what I've been doing for the last 45 minutes, to be exact. This bit of shading here, I'm going to take this down a little bit more. So the thing with doing fur, clearly we are just getting into it, but it's you know, with our pen, at least we can get like the direction, right? We can get the direction, we can just do impressions where the fur is more dense than not. We're focusing on our shading. See how his bum curves like right here into the haunch, and then this is fur that's part of his foot. So take this in here nice and dark. We want to have good definition between the curvature of his bum and a bit of the haunch here. I'm sure there will be many comments correcting my terminology for the anatomy of a little bunny rabbit. But that's okay. Lots of other things to correct. Okay, let's just finish like messing around with some of the fur along the bottom of his body. Did you guys put in lots of whiskers? And a little bit around his muzzle. I don't want to do too much on his chest. Maybe add in a little bit of shadow for his toes. And I think we should call it quits and run the other way. What do you guys think? Let's do... See, I want to fix this, but I'm really not too sure what to do. So I can just maybe alter a little bit of the curvature of his back and the ears. Take the shading back a little bit more. I mean, she does feed him. He's a nice, healthy, happy little bunny rabbit. What's going on here? Better not to ask. And this shading here. Am I fussing too much? Don't answer that. But if we can just maybe darken that a little bit. And you know, it's tricky because our eye is pulled to the light, but we're holding a dark pen, so we want to color in the light, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We have to train ourselves to look at the dark. What have I done here? This is a great big patch of shading, and I've kind of lost all sorts of definition in that, and I'm making it worse by continuing to shade it. So I started by saying to have a second pen where we could drop a lot of color. We haven't used that at all. And I don't think we really need to, right? Unless we want to, if I could use this to really emphasize the shadow on this top ear. This is helping a little bit. Take that in. Get some good definition there. And then along his back, just to emphasize the change in these two surfaces. Like that. And then I could maybe put in a few darker. Are you guys using your darker pen? Because this, grab your pen that just drops a lot of ink, okay? So that we can really emphasize some of the shadow. Might as well do the eyeball while we're at it. Anything that increases the contrast is going to go a long way to helping our contrasting areas look a little bit more defined and stuff. So if you are doing this with pastel or colored pencil, you know, this is where you're kind of going in with your darker tones, lifting with your eraser, and then going back with darker tones and all this kind of stuff, which is like the fun part of colored pencil, as long as you're working on paper that isn't going to wreck it too much. But I could do more messy fur on top of his head where it's just sort of disjointed a little bit, and then above his eye. A little bit, not too much. But as I say, I've kind of lost some of the definition because I was getting too carried away with my shading. You know what? I think this little guy is going to be all right just like this. I really don't think there's anything further that I can do to sort of fix him up and correct what I've done. So what you can check is the curvature of the face. Sorry, as I hit the cord. And the curvature of the bone around that other eye. A little bit of additional curvature on the top of the head before it goes down into the flat part of the head. And his muzzle, we haven't really spent any time in the front, but that's okay. I think we should stop at the point where we can do more harm than good. I don't like these little dots that my other pen has left on the top of his head. Okay, totally fussing. All right. Well, that was like a really good challenge. I think all of us deserve another coffee after this one. So as usual, thank you so much for your company, and happy sketching. Merry Christmas to everybody, and probably see you next year. Bye for now.